So, I just finished reading Chainsaw Man Volume 11. Volume 11 of Chainsaw Man contains the final few chapters of Chainsaw Man Part 1. Oh, it's too hot. When I got to the end of Chainsaw Man Chapter 97, which I thought was the final chapter of Chainsaw Man, it said end of Part 1. And then I went online and it turns out Part 2 has been announced, and of course, I'm thrilled. Chainsaw Man has been a very impactful part of my life for the better part of a year and a half, as I've slowly read through all of the manga. And of course I'm excited for the anime, but I'm more of a manga person anyway, so. What I want to do here is just celebrate what's so great about Chainsaw Man exactly. And if you want to know how great I think Chainsaw Man is, I have a Chainsaw Man tattoo on my leg, done by Matt Daniels, otherwise known as Sticky Pop. And I love this tattoo to bits, even though I can't see it that well. You don't need me to tell you what's so great about Chainsaw Man, really, because the hype surrounding this manga is absolutely ridiculous. But Tatsuki Fujimoto has created something that is wholly unique in Chainsaw Man. Something that is so inspired by so many disparate things, and so it should come off as watered down because of that, but it's not. It's heightened. In some ways, you could see it as something like a J.J. Abrams film, where it's just nostalgia. You know, Abrams' films are often like, hey, remember how things were better before? Let's make bad versions of the things that happened before. I thought that Chainsaw Man might be like this when I saw just how much horror influence there is, just how much it leans on shonen tropes. But this is a manga that sort of defies genre. Manga is very confusing when it comes to differentiating shonen and seinen, because this is a manga hugely inspired by horror. And yeah, I think it's a shonen manga, but I don't see how. If you don't know anything about Chainsaw Man, it tells the story of a young boy called Denji, who has grown up in a world where devils are real things. And the way that devils operate is that each devil is a manifestation of our fear. And so if there is a thing that a few people are afraid of, there's going to be some goofy demon manifestation of it, but that thing is not going to be that scary or that powerful. But the more something is feared within the collective consciousness, the more powerful it is. And so quite early on, we find out that kind of the big bad of the whole piece is something called the Gun Devil, because everyone's afraid of guns. Whereas early on, Denji fights something called the Tomato Devil, which is pathetic. Because a few people are afraid of tomatoes or have a phobia of tomatoes, but most people don't. So the Tomato Devil is this goofy kind of weak thing, whereas the Gun Devil is the ultimate big bad, until it's not, and I'm not going to spoil that for you. And so you've got a very simple setup for this world, but you also have something that is incredibly horror themed, something that allows us to play off character design and enjoy very weird, schlocky, horror-inspired visual concepts. As we meet devils in this world, those devils have been so meticulously and beautifully designed. The character design, enemy and monster design in Chainsaw Man is one of its greatest strengths. The fact that Tatsuki Fujimoto has such a wonderful eye for visual design. And this is something that I so value in visual media, is monster design. It is a visual expression of the creator's imagination. Something like a Junji Ito comic or a Dark Souls video game. You play the Dark Souls games. I was playing Elden Ring recently, and the monster design, the boss design, the random enemies that you fight, there is so much strangeness to their design. There is so much flavor, so much variety. And the way that the monsters in those games are designed has you questioning their backstories and why they look the way they do, why they move and act and sound the way that they do. I love that. You see it in the Berserk manga. You see it in good horror films. And you see it in Chainsaw Man. The devils in this manga toe this wonderful line between campy schlocky silliness, like there's a moment where Denji as Chainsaw Man rides a shark. But then there's also just incredible design ideas that if someone said to me, create a humanoid devil thing that uses a sword, I would not create this. Who would? If someone said the name Chainsaw Man and asked me to draw what I think a Chainsaw Man would look like, it wouldn't look like Tatsuki Fujimoto's Chainsaw Man. His eye for design, his imagination, and the way that he expresses it through fluidity and panel layouts is just gorgeous. Chainsaw Man is such a celebration of the medium of manga. It's such a celebration of horror and violence and blood and gore and nastiness. It revels in all this stuff, and I just love going along for the ride. Denji himself early on is transformed into the titular Chainsaw Man because he uses this little chainsaw devil, this little dog thing called Pochita, and they are best friends and they live in a little shack together because they're poor and they do odd jobs. And then the mafia betray and kill him. And so while he's in a dumpster, Pochita merges with him and becomes part of his heart, and now they are one thing called Chainsaw Man, and so Denji is recruited into this division of devil hunters. Now within this division you have a brilliant sort of found family dynamic. I am an absolute sucker for found families. I love found families in all of my fiction, and in Chainsaw Man you have a really, really good one because the people in this division are all susceptible to death. They do very, very dangerous jobs. They all have very different personalities that sort of encourage you to think that some will last longer than others, maybe because some are reckless, some are more or less experienced. And these people are very, very likable in their own ways. But the best of the bunch is a girl called Power. Power is also a devil, similar to Chainsaw Man, and she and Denji quickly become fast friends. Power is a wonderful, wonderful character that I became so attached to. She is nasty and aggressive and hateful. She's spiteful. She's a devil. She's literally bloodthirsty. She's stupid. She is oftentimes like an angry toddler. And she's also such a refreshing character in all of those ways, while also being a very loyal friend, which seems to often take her by surprise as much as anyone else. She loves Denji. She loves the work that she does in some ways, even though she doesn't really have a choice. Power and Denji's dynamic as a comedy duo all the way through this manga is fantastic, and they have a genuinely wonderful relationship arc. And I guess you do wonder, I wondered occasionally as I was going through this, will they end up together? Are they going to be a couple? Because Denji has a huge crush on his boss/recruiter, Ms. Makima. But Denji and Power are perfect together, in the sense that they are best friends. And they work together so well, they bounce off of each other so well. They are a found family that is perhaps better than any found family I've ever seen. And I mean just the two of them. The relationship between these two characters is soothing. And most of all, it's funny. These are two children. Two young people with so much strength, so much power. They are doing reckless and dangerous things. They're in over their heads. They're being controlled and told what to do by someone else. And yet they remain so funny and wholesome and welcoming and encouraging all the way through. I live for the dynamic of Denji and Power. But I also live for the action scenes. And as arc goes into arc, there is a gentle escalation of power, as you would expect from a shonen story like Dragon Ball, where Denji has to always fight bigger and bigger baddies and overcome bigger and bigger odds, and he manages to do it over and over again without it seeming like things are getting too ridiculous. In fact, this is when it is at its most exciting, how we try to constantly escalate the plot, the risk factor, the stakes, and keeping the action and the aggression and the spectacle of it all so much fun. And Tatsuki Fujimoto manages to do that in such a satisfying way by always having something up his sleeve that Denji can do, or a handicap, or something that changes and turns the tide of a fight in a way that you don't expect. And what's also really cool is there isn't that much combat. There's so much downtime in this manga. There's a lot of time where our characters just sit and chat and discuss things and take a breather, and that gives them time to grow as individuals and as a group and within their relationships. At first, I really didn't like Denji. Like a lot of shonen protagonists, he is just frustratingly childish and unlikable. And then you grow to just love his heart You love his soul, and the same can be said for Power. This wonderful mash of wholesomeness between these two characters, and the incredible, ridiculous visual design and horror-inspired spectacle, the ridiculous amounts of blood and gore, and aggression and violence, it all juxtaposes itself so well in a very satisfying way, like a meal where the components just shouldn't go together, like the kind of Subway sandwich that I like to build. These flavors don't go together, but I like it. And that's kind of what you get with Chainsaw Man. It is horror, it is shonen manga, it is found family. There's something so campy and delightful about it, and it all smushes together into a very, very appealing, delightful, and satisfying dish. I've now finished Chainsaw Man Part 1. I'm going to read it all again. I am so happy with this manga. And after finally finishing it, I'm really glad that I got a Chainsaw Man tattoo. It represents the most fun that I think I've had reading an entire manga from beginning to end. What a journey. What a saga. The twists and turns and the dynamics and the relationships and the sheer spectacle of it all. Chainsaw Man is special. It's really special. Check it out if you haven't, and subscribe for books.